Guys, welcome to another episode of the Mastery Podcast. I am delighted to be joined by a mountain of a man that many of you will know, some of you won't know. I am delighted to be joined today by pro bodybuilder, IFBB Pro Bodybuilder, dietitian, registered dietitian, an educator, right? John Jewett. John, welcome.
Oh, Mark, first, it's great to be on and meet you, and always a pleasure to jump on these podcasts and just appreciate that someone wants to even hear me speak. So I used to listen to podcasts all the time around educators and businessmen, and to be on the other end now, it's always humbling and an honor. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for giving your time. And, I know a lot about I know you as a bodybuilder. And then it was very intriguing for me when your education program came out, and hopefully I'll get to do a podcast with Mark soon. We've been messaging to, get on a podcast, and we had a nice meal together at Mark Fox a good few months ago. So it'd be very interesting it was great to see what you guys are doing and what you're developing. But for, everybody on this episode, I always like to kind of say, where are we going to end up? Like, what are people going to expect out of today's episode? And John actually doesn't know. So that's quite interesting. But from a conversational perspective, John, you've had a great career bodybuilding. And I know that will continue. And the backstory with your powerlifting right through to your nutrition and now the course. I want to delve into the bodybuilding, the sport, your career, your journey, and how that's ended up at this educational point to just give people. I'm so passionate about helping coaches understand that this is a journey, it's a career, and it's a commitment, as opposed to how quickly can we join the fitness industry, make loads of money. There's a big journey in between that I love the opportunity to share with people. And so I'd like to just give you a second, if you could, to just give us a little backstory in terms of how long you've been doing what you've been doing professionally as a bodybuilder, and obviously into your profession, to just give people a little bit of understanding who don't know who you are, how everything came about.
Yeah. So not to try to make the long story short, that could be a challenge, but I'll do my best. And I think with a lot of things that you end up finding passion for, it's something that you find very early on. And for me, that was just training, athletics in general, which the first time I ever went to the gym was when I was 5 years old. My neighbor was a bodybuilder, and he took me one day. And, I grew up in that early 90s era. I was born in 86. So I was surrounded by Stallone and Arnold and Van Damme and it was very muscle influenced society. So you kind of always wanted to be like that. But I always had a passion around just athletics and training, even at that age. And that was a big influence. So I am just wired to go all in on things that I get interested in. So even as a kid, whatever it was, if it was martial arts, if it was track or whatever, it was like my life all of a sudden would be surrounded, fully encompassed by it. So I started actually truly training when I was in middle school, around the age when you want to start impressing girls and you're looking more at your body. And I loved training. It was an outlet for me. It was almost nearly a therapy session in a sense, and absolutely loved it. And I wanted to surround myself with it, and also just ask the questions like daily, how do I get better at this? How does it work? If I knew how it works, I can apply it better, and that'll advance me at a faster rate. And that just continued. And eventually, when others are seeing your results, like in high school, I would be the guy to come ask, like, hey, John, what supplement should I take? It's that conversation never changed, right? Hey, John, what PED should I take? But it's always like around that, or what are you doing? How, and I would explain it. And I would get a lot of satisfaction of explaining these teachings to people of what I was picking up and learning. And that just kept rolling into everything that I've done education wise. I worked at GNC for a long time, selling sling and supplements, but I was terrible at sales. But man, I knew the most at that store. I could explain how everything worked in great detail, and I loved that part of it. And that ended up leading me into, going into getting my degree in exercise science, my master's in nutrition, because I love school. I could have stayed in school, probably been a forever student. And throughout that time period, I was doing my own powerlifting and that eventually led to bodybuilding, which I always kind of had that early influence from when I was like 5 years old from, and started eventually coaching because people were seeing my result and also liked how I explained things, and they made logical sense out of it. And they're like, do you coach? And my first client his name was Josh Scorpio. He worked at GNC with me, and he asked me to prep him. And I was like, I've never even competed yet myself. So I prepped him for free. And we went to show. He looked decent for me being a first-time coach and him being a first-time competitor. And that just started opening that door to the coaching world where you do well with someone else asks, and it just kind of rolls from there. And that was my continued journey along my own bodybuilding pursuits when that started, of how do I get better? What are the questions do I need to keep learning on? And diving deeper and deeper. And when finally social media came around, well, I would post some training, but I felt like I was obligated to say like why I was doing it, like to kind of, how my own brain worked. And people connected with that. And I started pulling in more interest around thinking bodybuilders, right? Ones that were like, hey, I want to learn more about how this stuff works. And eventually you get all these clients and you're having to repeat yourself on how to everything work and teachings and education. And that's such a part of bodybuilding, because we're not, as one coach, you're a posing coach, you're a lifestyle coach, you're coaching nutrition, you're coaching training. You have a lot of hats that you wear. So it's really hard to not have like when you're in school, you're surrounded by, you have a skill coach, you have a strength coach, etc. So I was like, man, I need like some database where I have all this stuff where I could send my client and they can learn it all. And so that's how the early developments of J3 University came about, was me just wanting a database for people to learn, and I wouldn't have to keep repeating myself to my clients. And that's where we kind of rolled it in today, and actually honing in what it actually is, which is to elevate the physique coaching standard. And we develop coaches.
I love that. It's something that I really want to delve into. But a question that I'd like to start this episode off with: what does mastery mean to you?
With mastery, because it also ties in with success as well, because some people want to tie in like a status to a success or a monetary value. And like what I teach in J3U, it's Maslow's hierarchy of need, and self-development and self-actualization being the highest level that satisfies human needs. And I think that's what we all want, right? To see out our fullest potential. So I think if you're able to see out that fullest potential and self-development within whatever your pursuit is, I think that's your own journey to mastery within that. Now, some might want to compare that to others, of how others have displayed mastery in a subject, and that might be how smart they are or how muscular they are. But I feel like that leads you to a failing amongst yourself because you're comparing to others. So I think it has to be seeing out a continued pursuit to seeing out your fullest potential in whatever area that is pursuing. And that will lead to mastery. And it takes a long time to actually see that out. But it's, again, the continued pursuit towards that.
I love that. That's so valuable for, especially a lot of the younger coaches coming into the industry to hear that from you. You talked about this in your early days, this thirst for knowledge, and then people asking you. How important has you becoming a person of influence impacted the reason people were asking you? What characteristics? And I asked you this question because part of what I try and do with coaches, especially with this episode, with the podcast, is help coaches become, however long it takes, that person that people want to ask for help, want to be intrigued by. And you said in the early days, hey, I was just studying and I was learning and I was training, and people came and asked me. But not everybody in the gym, John, gets asked. So yeah. What do you think that you were doing or saying, or how you were behaving, that coaches could pick up a little nugget of things that you were doing consciously or subconsciously that impacted people's decision to actually want to be interested enough to ask you questions? I
think the people, and I think from an outside perspective too, like who draws my interest, that maybe they don't have a great physique either. Because we'll be honest, like if you get a pro card, all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, educate me, Mr. Pro, right? Like you're the go-to guy, which we know, like not all pro bodybuilders are going to be great coaches or great educators. And so there's a lot of individuals that just don't have the physique, but they're phenomenal educators or coaches. So how do those draw my interest? And there's just a clear transparency of them just being a real person that draws me in. There's a humility to them which I think as an educator you have to have, because some want to show how smart they are and they're trying to leverage that over others and prove kind of people wrong. And if you're coming from a true place of wanting to help, it has to come from a place of humility. And I think displaying that, it lowers those barriers for people that might be intimidated to come up to you and want to learn. But then also, I think you need to share a display of that passion. So whatever topic that someone loves, like for me, like training, bodybuilding, like light up when you talk about it, right? Like you love it and people can see that. And there's a quote from, I think, John Wesley, like light yourself on fire with passion and people will come miles to see you burn. Maybe skewed that. It's kind of dark, but if you love what you're doing and you show that passion, people are going to want to connect with that. People want something like that fires them up too. They want to connect with you. So I think displaying that passion and love for things, and then whatever you're wanting to teach or promote, just be true to yourself and uphold like good standards and values, and come from a place of humility with helping others in mind. I think those attributes draw a lot of people in and draw in the right people, because there's also now with social media, people trying to leverage others' faults, others' failings to bring in an audience. And that's not the audience that you want that are going to stick around long time. They're in quick for the entertainment value. And I think to truly build up a successful business, could be two ways to do it, right? When you're trying to build a building, you have a little building and you just tear down everyone else's and your building looks big. Or you don't worry about the other buildings and you focus on yours and you build it massive. So rather than going around tearing down everyone else for what they're doing, focus on what your message is and build that up. And I think having those attributes will bring a lot of people through.
I think especially with one of the things we see in the social media world is that coaches, in order to be a person of influence, is going to require you to become knowledgeable and skilled and not have to tear down people's houses to do it. But in the world we have today, it's like, but that's going to take me time. If I can tear down these houses and get myself to where I want to be quicker, that's going to be a better way because I'm going to get more attention. But I think from what you were just saying, that attention is not good attention because they're not necessarily going to be bought into you for the right reasons, correct?
Yeah, I agree. Like it works. And that's why I think people go and flock to that. And we see a lot of influencers that have done that and have success, but define success, right? Like I think it's having positive influence in people and helping them self-development, right, to that greatest potential. And we think about those people that are tearing down others, and surrounding yourself with that own negativity and thought process. I don't think that has the intention behind it to truly help people. It's hurting people in a sense. And that doesn't have longevity in mind when you look at like the big picture for your business or your coaching in the long term.
An interesting observation I've made over the years is that trainers progress less than coaches. And I see in my understanding and my articulation, a trainer to me is somebody who facilitates somebody, not just in a training session in the gym, maybe just send them out a training program and a workout. And I've always been very felt very responsible to make people aware of what I feel a coach is, and what a coach actually does. In your eyes, how would you differentiate that trainer versus coach?
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, earlier on, like I had that skewed as well, because you want to learn all the nuts and bolts of coaching, right? How do you program a nutrition with your Excel sheet, like putting together the perfect workout plan on paper, and then you give it to the client, and there you go do it. And they don't do it the way you think, or they're also implementing other areas in their life that aren't ideal. There's a huge psychological component and relationship building that must happen. So I think that's where you start bridging those gaps between here's your plan, we work out, and then actually developing someone to reframing mindset to make this, and it really is making it more of a sustainable approach, which I know that sounds very lifestyle, but it still translates into like high level competition, because the people that get really good at a high level, they have found ways to do this long term and make it sustainable. And if you do that, you enjoy it and you love it even more. So I think with a true coach, you're helping develop that person into a sustainable and enjoyable process, and building that relationship and rapport with them that with just sending a workout program, I think it lacks in that. I'll be honest, like that's one of my more weaker traits, because I am very analytical and teaching oriented. I'm also like an only child and an introvert, so I'm very like closed off, and I'm not the networker or the relationship builder. So that's taken some work to try to do, and putting systems in place in my own business to where I can come across and have that relationship building and prompt those questions that need to happen. But that, I will say, like, that's one of my struggles that I still kind of continue with, because I can be very, get it done and put the work in. So
where's the pros and cons for that? Because we've got coaches that are very, what we would class as very animated in the gym, very outgoing, very confident. They have the clients, but you don't watch the clients make progress. We have the very vocal, entertaining coaches online that are getting in the clients, but then they can't deliver the programming. And they can't deliver it. Then you have the analytical coach who can often bore their clients to death, i.e., like you said, spreadsheet, formulas, data. And I've had people say to me when I was coaching, Mark, you don't have that approach, right? I kind of, and so how do you find that middle ground as a coach, where you are analytical to the point of educating your clients so that they progress, but then you bring that personality edge to give the client a part of what they want as well, right?
It's tough. And I have to think of, like, are we talking like in-person training, right? Or online coaching? Because that's primarily
I think you got to do the both, right? Especially with the online world. Now I teach predominantly online.
I think if you are an earlier on coach, I have a high value set that I do think you need to train people in person at some point, because otherwise there's going to be some gaps really missing. Especially from, you just don't see the errors that people are going to be making that they do in the gym. And then you also have that relationship building, the communication piece that really gets developed that you might really skip online, especially now with like modern society. It's all text message that could be misread or miscommunicated. So I think lots of value from working in the gym or coaching people in person at some point to help develop that skill set. And I think being around those others that are going to be like on your sales team, or if you are training, will help you as well. Now, through social and online coaching, you will find what you put out is what you get back. Yeah. So if you are more of like the analytical coach, you're going to get very analytical people. And that's what I found as well. So if like that's a passion and a skill set, like absolutely put that out. But you need to see like what are the other areas where, you can leverage your personality and have some personal pieces that you do put out. And maybe that's utilizing your own clients too. Like the power of someone else to help draw in other clients is huge. So if you have some clients that are super passionate, like, hey, could I film a testimonial from you just talking about my coaching? And then you see that's that client, they're like passionate, they're lit up, and like share that. That's a power of, for one, your coaching results, but also delivering some entertainment value. So what I wish I did along the way was collect those pieces of testimonials and people talking and praising you, so you can always have those to share back. So I think there's a way to help utilize others, because if that's not your strong suit, and again, being like the solo introvert, it's hard to reach out to people. But gosh, I really wish I picked up on those people that had my strengths earlier on and helped kind of integrate them and utilize them more. And that's exactly what I have now on my team. I have those that are excellent at networking, connecting with others, and they connect me in with where I need to be delivering content. So I don't want to force like my weakness and try to develop it into a strength, because I don't think it'll ever going to beat someone where that is their passion of being like that talker or that extrovert. It's just too fake, you can't, that's part of what I was speaking on earlier, being transparent and real. So leverage your strengths, but utilize others that you're surrounded with, whether you're your coaching team or your clients.
Before I get into the actual, your approach around bodybuilding and nutrition, I want to come back. I mean, great. When I was bodybuilding, all these years, you've competed on the Olympia stage 3 times. Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
Which, for a bodybuilder to know people that have done that, but not just once, but multiple times, is just phenomenal. But bodybuilding, even at the amateur level for me, I owe so much to it. I don't compete now, but if I had my time again, I'd do it. I'd do it again and again and again and again. And there's no resentment or reflection of it because it shaped me so much. But as somebody who's done it, were you competing pro from what year?
2016 was my
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So, you've been competing. Since when did you start actual competing?
That was 2012.
Wow.
Yeah. So
okay,
it's been like 11 years.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, a question I have for you is bodybuilding helped me create new levels of character, work ethic I never thought I had within me. What have you taken from bodybuilding that has helped you create or help form other parts of your life across since 2012, since you've been bodybuilding? Like, how is it carried over and kind of what has it helped you learn the most from being a bodybuilder?
I know that's the
Characteristic-wise.
deep question.
Well,
No, I know. It's because there was already some traits there that I guess I had where like I always wanted to see out my potential, whatever sport it was, right? But you usually don't have a lot of interest in things that you're not excellent at. And I was really good at powerlifting, but it just wasn't quite there to hold my interest.
Really?
And within bodybuilding, it was just so involving, every aspect of my life, which I think I just connected with because that's how I wanted it to be, just fully enthralled in it, right? But being a clinical dietitian, that was my first career. Started out in the hospital with eventually I was working in the ICU and the NICU, people in hospital beds, people passing away daily, right? So that gave me a lot of perspective. Getting into bodybuilding, it was challenging. It was hard. Some people say there's a degree of suffering, which I don't see bodybuilding as suffering, but it is hard. So having this perspective around, and I guess this is almost a separate tangent, but please. I think keeping your perspective on where others are in life and not just looking at your discontent or challenges, I think gives you a drive that you can overcome a lot. And it's kind of emotional, honestly, because the people in those hospital beds, they don't have a choice of man, I wish I could make this end. I wish I could not be sick. But you could stop your cardio, or you could you could go eat more food. All this was my choice. So I was so happy that those were my choices when I started bodybuilding, and I loved bodybuilding, but there are hard parts of it, right? So when I would come across some type of adversity in bodybuilding, which we all have it, and that's why you pursue it, right? And why things are worth pursuing, because they have challenges and they should. Otherwise, it's not very meaningful. You need to be uncomfortable. I would just keep my perspective around those hospital patients that I would see. And it's anything is better than that. Bring on any type of, challenge in bodybuilding, which you overcome. And it just gets you to a point where you feel very resilient in the ability to overcome anything. And I think that's what bodybuilding has really brought out, that I don't necessarily have a limit. It's very much going to be within my own mind to set those limits. And whether it be in business or relationships or anything else that transpires outside of bodybuilding, that I have that tenacity to overcome. And there's always someone out there that has a much greater challenge, to where I should always be content in my situation and try to pick out my positives and not focus on my negatives. So I think just through it, it's given me a tenacity to overcome challenge, and also great perspective around staying positive and happy and content in my life and what I do.
For people that haven't, I played rugby for 20 years. I was bodybuilding. The training and the sport element, to anybody that hasn't put themselves through a challenging physical experience in their life where it really challenges them to go beyond, would it be something that you would be very much encouraging to say your children now or in the future? I don't know if you have children, but if you did or do, I think about this when I have children, the encouragement to push you physically, and what it actually has taught me over the years, that the body ultimately is a vehicle for me to learn so much from. And if I don't try and use it to the best of its ability, that part of who I've become in my life would not be realized? And would you be encouraging to people still to say, use this vehicle, use this thing that you've been given, this gift, to challenge it to the most that it could be, because ultimately it carries over to so many other areas of your life?
Well, it's like a lot of time, like some of the best bodybuilders were athletes to begin with. Even the people that I coach, like they had some level of athletics where they understood getting pushed, and they come over to bodybuilding. It's usually those clients I need to pull back. So they've already understand how to take the physical to a failure point, and the mental won't be the limiting factor. And I think having those athletics to whatever degree lets you realize that to a certain capacity and overcome the mental part, which in all those other areas of your life, usually it's the mental barrier that's there. It's not going to be a physical one, but the physical one earlier on can really challenge your mental capacity to develop that. So I think that's why athletics and sports in general are just so important now. Pushing someone towards bodybuilding per se, like if you'd love to do that, then yeah, you should, right? There's a lot of reasons why I'd say don't bodybuild. Yeah. You know, it's you know, if you take it there, it needs to be like fully committed at some point, like anything. But I think to your point, athletics in general, a sport that's going to push you physically, absolutely. Like if I had children, like we would start like the early development and athletic program, and if they chose like, hey, that's not for me, Dad, so be it. Because that's not to say, right, that there's not individuals that haven't done athletics that aren't successful and can push themselves mentally, but I do think there's value in it.
You know, we teach a lot of coaches business. We teach coaches how to build what I call I've taught people for years the building the muscle of the body, and now I teach a lot of people how to build the muscle of resilience and in business and having that staying power. And you know, it's almost like sometimes we come across a lot of coaches that will get 8 weeks into trying to drive the business forward, and then they I have to slow down a little bit more. And it's almost like somebody who's really happy to do a 19-week prep and hey coach, you keep giving me what I need to do. Pull my calories down a little bit more. Give me a bit of cardio, because they've built this tolerance muscle of I'm happy to keep going until I've got the end result. And that's why I think that was a question to you, whether athletics really does help people condition the tenacity and the resilience and the ability to just keep going. And that's something that I think I agree with you on, and is that, you know, I think it's an important thing for a lot of people to do. Yeah,
it's, you know, there's people want to be motivated all the time. And there's absolutely going to be moments where you're not motivated to do a lot of things, right? Whether that be, that's just reality. Like it's truth. Like you have days of your business where you don't want to go do it. And you might start questioning, why am I doing this? Like, I hate this. You'll have days like that. And those are days where your discipline is what carries you through. And it's hard earlier on to have that trait. But I do think like seeing that earlier on in athletics, because I did some martial arts for like 3 years when I was from like 8 to 11 years old. And man, that was some of the best discipline that I learned. And there was days like I didn't want to go. Usually my dad would be like, we're paying for this, you're going, right? And then there would be rewards along the way. Like, oh yeah, that, you know what, that did give me some satisfaction. You kind of start enjoying that and realizing there's hard days, but the reward is much greater later on. So you develop that delayed satisfaction, which, well, in society, we don't have that. We want it like Amazon Prime satisfaction. So I think for one, you're not always going to be motivated, but that's when your discipline needs to carry you out. And you can develop a lot of that through athletics. Yeah. And I think that's also on the coach's side, that you need to help foster someone to develop discipline, but also make it enjoyable for them out the gate. And don't think you have to make them at your level right away, because you're going to have clients coming to you from all different levels, right? So you need a good broad spectrum for the athlete development process to get them there. And earlier on, it might not be your ideal coaching setup, but you need to have that adjustability so you can take that person from, you know, a lower tiered client or, you know, bodybuilder, whatever it may be, and develop them along the way in each skill set. And that's, you know, when I'm doing assessments, I have like my different like nutrition and training and lifestyle, and people are on different spectrums of what level tier they are at. So some might have like a professional lifestyle, but are like level 1 for nutrition. So I'm looking at like, how do I develop them along the way? And you have to be able to really scale your coaching skill. And if you get them successful and enjoying it, that they'll remember that when they start getting challenged and that's where that discipline will kick in. So I think there's a few things as a coach that you need to be trying to elicit out of your clients to help so they can stick it through, and realize that, hey, there's an enjoyable and satisfaction out of delayed, gratification in this. And some days you're not going to want to do it, but that's where the discipline kicks in, right?
I love that. Now, how would you describe, being somebody that's gone through a lot of different training methodologies throughout my life, training with Jordan Peters a lot.
Oh, man.
In the early days, found that I had to pull away a little bit from that and find my own little way. Being prepped for 2 years by Milos.
Well, that's like different every end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, completely different. And Jordan and I went to Serbia and trained with Milos for a week, and that was cool. That was pretty intense. And the reason why I bring these up is Milos, Jordan, methodologies, where they've come from. How would you describe your approach to bodybuilding?
Well, I think there's my personal approach, but then there's also deviations around that to meet clients where they need to, because there's a lot of ways around training we see, right? With Milos, with Jordan, a lot of guys get to the end outcome and are successful. So I think picking that up, that there's a lot of ways to get this done in bodybuilding. And at least like as my educator that's out there, the best program, it still starts with what is sustainable, adherent, and enjoyable. So you're going to have someone that's going to hate doing low volume, high effort training, but have a full buy-in for something maybe more like Milos, right? Like high volume and circuits and things. So if you have that buy-in, that's what you're going to probably do the best on either way. So you're going to find that around yourself. Now, I have my own personal things that I like, and that's what's led to my success because I'm very bought into it. But it meets the framework, I think, of training modalities for hypertrophy, which, not to go in some long rant about what all that is, but I came from powerlifting, right? So, and also from an athletic background where work harder, get more result. And so in powerlifting, it taught me how to grind out like max effort reps, 1 rep singles to where you're about to get crushed and you're having to get someone pull a squat bar off you, right? So I knew how to take it there, like to a true mechanical state of failure. So when I first got into bodybuilding, I was looking at elite FTS where, there was Westside Barbell, Dave Tate, Jim Windler. Yeah, all these guys. And the first kind of influence around training was Troponin Nutrition and Justin Harris. And they were starting to educate in elite FTS, some bodybuilding stuff. So I came across these guys, and Justin was well-versed and he talked nerdy like I liked. And I started looking more into what they were doing, and they were doing DC training, dog crap training with Dante Trudell. And I'm like, this is perfect. It made logical sense to me, which I needed that. And also it translated over from powerlifting well, like beating the logbook, strength progressions. And that was my first introduction to what I started training with bodybuilding. And I had success with it. Absolutely. However, I think I implemented it. I interpreted it incorrectly because I came from a point of like point A to point B, like just get stupid strong. And then you get injuries and beat up, and you're not losing the intention around what happens on a rep by rep basis, right? Like the quality of that rep and the quality of that stimulus. So, and there's also points of like just taking it too far to a failure point that was losing technique. So like coming back from more of an extreme where now there's a little bit more volume in place, and there's always the intention around directing every rep to be as precise as possible within reason and taking that to a very high effort level, but prior to like form breaking down. So I do cater still to like a volume level that is within the need for me to grow. So I don't put myself as like low volume or high volume, because it's just what is the volume that I require. And it does, on paper, it looks lower if we had to classify it. But I am more of a higher effort trainer. And I believe like most of the guys you see, that's what you learn first is you just train hard. And most of the guys get that result there, opposed to guys that just don't train hard and do a lot of volume. So I think if like taking your sets high effort and then learning that skill, and that is a skill, will take you very, very far, but within keeping like very strict and precise form for what you're trying to attend to train. I know that wasn't really like encompassing my training methodology, but at least my thought process around trying to balance what we really see the debated on, right? Like training to failure or not training to failure, high volume versus not having high volume. And really all those are tools, Mark, right? It's not one or the other. There's going to be time courses where that's appropriate, like going to a failure, and sometimes it's not, right? Or having more volume in areas or lower in other areas. So that's where I've come development-wise as an athlete, to realize those things and not be so dogmatic in my approach, and especially so with clients, though I can have some flexibility around that. But I still have my roots in what I believe in. Trying to really push people effort-wise is in the forefront of that.
And you see, there's a lot of quite younger coaches. You've explained this very well, but there's a lot of younger coaches that will say, okay, cool, I'm now following this methodology, and obviously all the DC stuff's still out there and all the other training methodologies are out there. And they take something, they take an idea, they take a methodology, they apply it to themselves, they see it's working on themselves, and then boom, it appears on everybody's training program within their clients. And I think this is something that's important to address, as you're an experienced athlete, bodybuilder. But like you said, for me personally, I found out how I like to train through years of training, and realizing I still like a couple of real heavy balls out sets in my session. But I also know that I taper down a touch a little bit later on into the session, and then favor slightly higher repetition and volume for me, as that's favored the way that my body's worked as I've gone through my journey. Your approach, as you said, a little bit less on the volume side, more on the intensity side. How does your methodology alter to cater for the different levels of clients that you bring in at different levels, even though your ego and your brain and your training mind wants to go there? I'm asking you this question to almost imagine you're giving this answer to the coaches that are giving the blanket statement, I like training like this, so my clients train like this.
Yeah, well, I think something you brought up initially is starting in programs. I think earlier on, you have a few different people that come through, right? You have people that are like paralysis by analysis, like they're constantly searching for the perfect program and they just can't commit. Where they commit short term, then they read about the next program and they jump programs. So I think earlier on, you should try some different approaches and execute the program like it's intended to be. Because someone, obviously Dante at the time, way smarter than me about what he was doing and coaching people. I don't have any knowledge to be able to modify it, right? Just follow it, and don't follow it for a month. Like, give it a good 6 months of following this program, and then you could try something different, but give it its fair shot. Through time, like you, Mark, right? You develop on pieces that you're like, this was really beneficial when I was doing this and this. Eventually, you do develop your own methodology. You can't do that earlier on. Yeah. So that's when I say, like, if you are an earlier on coach, it's such a great time because we have such great education and resources that to put yourself through that. And I would say, like, before you're coaching people, you need a base knowledge of how things work. And that's what I would want to guide people to where you base what you're doing to clients off of some type of system that's developed for a wide spread of clients versus just using your own personal programs. And that's used to how it always been. And I'll be honest, like when I started coaching, a lot of it was what was passed down to me. And we see that so often, right? Whether it's drug protocols or training protocols, it's just getting passed down, which it loses its meaning behind why things were put together the way they were. Because at some point, some coach put a program together and was like, this is made for you. I personalized it. And then it becomes unpersonalized by copy and pasting. So don't copy paste your workouts, but really asking the questions around what does the client need and the assessment process, and then building off of the needs basis of that client. And, I think it's that where it needs to start, not around what you want. So it is going to be a development process still, because we know it's going to happen, Mark, though, right? Applying pieces of what you found valuable to your clients. But I think learning from others. So I think that's when you are an earlier on coach, like having some mentorships or gaining education from those that have done it for years, like yourself. Like Mark, or I know, that we have a broad spectrum of tools to program in. So utilize those people to gain those tools and apply. And then through time, you'll be able to have the same tool sets like Mark and I, where we have a broad spectrum of understanding and tools to use for different client situations. But earlier on, you don't. So I wish so much earlier on that I got under some type of mentorship or under some type of like education course, right? I'm not trying to plug my own course, but to where I could develop that thought process, because it really slowed me down in developing as a coach because of that.
I think there's a word that I've used throughout my whole career, which I'm very proud of myself and grateful for doing, but I use the word coaching eye. And I don't just mean coaching eye is in seeing somebody how they do a squat or whatever they do. I just mean that ability to talk to somebody and actually have a radar, because my radar is so broad with things that I've learned and heard over the years. I'm like, okay, that's where I need to go because of that. And it's being committed to filling that toolbox up over and over and over again till it's brimming over the sides, until you have developed through time this, breadth of knowledge and experience, which is so exciting. And that moves me on nicely to kind of the nutrition aspect, because I think people isolate the training, but you've come from the dietitian world and nutrition inside out, right? How does your approach to nutrition, what could we take from you in this episode that gives us an insight into the way that you would look at nutrition? There's a lot of different methodologies around nutrition, out there for the way that people apply themselves. From a bodybuilding perspective, is there a different perspective that you have on how you program nutrition? And I think I'll ask you in terms of like the some coaches are very, very heavy on pushing people high and hard with calories and completely, sometimes putting people in very challenging positions health-wise, to get to where they want to be. And then there may be somebody like you, I don't know how you look at things differently in terms of your approach to helping somebody change how they physically look. Is there a different approach nutritionally wise from your depth of experience and knowledge that you have?
Well, I do cater to primarily competitors now.
Yeah.
And also I have people coming to me and the goal of what they ask me is like, I want to be a pro bodybuilder or in being at the highest level possible. Right. So that sets expectations of what's going to be executed.
Yeah.
And for that goal, there actually will be sacrifices to be made and to get pushed hard. Some people realize that what they actually wanted and how they want to do things, the goal has to be adjusted because of that. So I'm given the task. I try to set client expectations up and what that's going to entail. Until you're kind of in it, you don't really realize it. So this goes across the board with training, nutrition, PEDs, all of it. My job, if they're wanting to hire me for that, is absolutely to achieve that goal.
Yeah.
And that has to be within that risk profile too, because you'll have people that realize like, I'm not okay with this risk. And that might mean adjusting the goal around that. And what you should pick up around all this is that there's assessment that's occurring to cater the plan to the goal, to the risk. So nutrition wise, there's going to be points where there might be, to some, like an obsessive level of tracking that must take place because we have to be accurate with nutrition to be able to adjust it. There's going to be times in the off season where, hey, I want pro bodybuilder size. There's going to be uncomfortability with pushing weight up and pushing food up, because if you are comfortable, likely we're not changing the body to a degree. Or times where I might pull food down on a bikini client that is sub 1,000 calories that someone would gawk at, like metabolic damage, right? That was back before we knew a lot about it, or cardio levels that are going to be, unsustainable or deemed high risk. But that's what you're signing up for when you come for high level bodybuilding. So I'm all for achieving people's goals when that's what they ask of you. Now, there's other people where you're going to realize that maybe that is their goal and they have the means to do it, but you also have to have like some ethical and moral obligations and seeing out what might be the best for this person long time. I get a lot of clients that are young, right? They're in their early 20s, very risk averse, but they also don't realize what that means for them long time. Like say the female competitor that they're all in and they're like, I don't care about having kids, but they're not at an age, like a lot changes from when you're 23 to 33 to where you need to guard them a little bit on your own. because you never want to be the coach that takes something away from them that they're going to regret later on. Maybe that's fertility for a female. Maybe that's shaving some years off someone's life because of cardiovascular implications of what you had to do with them programming wise from a high level bodybuilding perspective. When you might see that client as, you know what, this isn't a career bodybuilder. So how do we justify that risk? And that's when you might need to not, like for me, I when I see that risk for the client, they want to take it there outside of what I'm comfortable doing. I don't take the clients on. There's a coach out there that will do that. But that's where I have to draw my own lines because of upholding like some degree of ethical and moral obligations around coaching. So I know that's a long way, not really answering your direct question around nutrition, but at least from my mindset of how I'm programming all these variables, that's where it's at. So I'm absolutely going to take someone there and push them when it makes sense from a risk perspective and also from what their goal is. Now, back to your question, though, from nutrition and what I've learned and how I was introduced to bodybuilding, there's a lot of old school dogmatic approaches that we were given, right? It was basically you eat the same meal nearly every single day, chicken and rice. So it was in college when brown rice was really popular. And that was the healthier thing, right? So it was like cold chicken and brown rice, plain, like no condiments, like trying to swallow it all down with water as I was trying to, learn all this stuff. And when you program a diet like that into something nutrition, we had different ones in school, but chronometer is popular. You realize there starts to become lots of gaps in fiber, gaps in several different micronutrients that are present. And although this is the clean diet, the one that's supposed to be optimal, right, for bodybuilding, from my dietitian background, I find that to be far from optimal because I see a more optimal approach being one that's to sustain health and to be really good at bodybuilding. You need to be able to do this for a good period of time. So we should have a dietary approach that, for one, meets the goal that we're trying to achieve, but also meets the goal of sustainability over the long term for health. And so a complete diet is going to be one that can complete all those micronutrient gaps, all the fiber gaps. You see a lot of guys in the offseason run into digestive issues because all they're eating is white rice and chicken and beef. You need fiber for lots of reasons. You need fruits and vegetables for, like, if we had one thing to do health-wise, eat fruits and vegetables. And when I was first getting in bodybuilding, like, you didn't eat fruit because that was sugar and that would lead to more body fat gain. Veggies, we just didn't have room for them because we're eating so much rice.
That was the issue, right? That was the issue.
Yeah. If you were to eat a veggie, it's like broccoli or green beans. It's like, shit, those like take up too much room. So my nutrition piece is that I try to bring to bodybuilding is programming a diverse diet that could fill in all the gaps, that would be a healthful diet as well, but also still achieve our goals that we want in bodybuilding without taking anything away from that. So I implement lots of fruits and vegetables within the dieting process. My clients are like, I never eat fruit leading up into a show. It's like, yeah, fruit's great. It has a high volume. It's fiber. Like, it's all the things you want over white rice when you're prepping for a show. And then even in the off season, for example, I don't have room for these vegetables. Okay, well, let's make sure we move to vegetables that are also like carbohydrate starch dense, right? Like, why don't we utilize peas or a butternut squash or some veggie where it also brings a good carbohydrate contribution, or dried fruits? We have ways to still bring in those phytonutrients that we need, those antioxidants, those anti-inflammatory compounds. And this is so pertinent to the enhanced bodybuilder, because what is the bottleneck for these guys, right? Health marker detriment. What's going to prevent a lot of that? A lot of your foods that you do. Guys in the offseason where I'm bloated, I have acid reflux, like I can't push food down anymore. How do I keep a guy getting digestion moving and pushing food down? A diverse diet, fruits, vegetables, all these aspects. So that's one thing that I've taken away, at least from being my dietary background, is building that enough variety and diversity within diet that it would deem as being more complete and sustaining the long-term bodybuilding.
Isn't that interesting? Because, I'll be honest, for a good number of years, it was the whole food is fuel, food is fuel, food is fuel. And, especially now, I'm 46 now, and longevity is just an absolute fascination of mine now, and working with my own functional medicine doctor here in Dubai. And even though I've studied functional medicine for years, suddenly this other part of me is going, oh, I can't wait for my phytonutrients. I can't wait for my fiber. And I'm like, now it's become completely it's more important. And I had a question for you, which was, what do we think coaches are lacking in terms of their nutritional knowledge nowadays? And I think what you've answered so well in from a nutrition perspective is, to add muscle, we need the calories and we need adequate protein and adequate carbs, but ultimately we're still feeding a cellular organism structure that basically needs the nutrients and the balance to make these functions happen optimally, or else all we're doing is providing fuel that's not necessarily the right fuel to keep it optimal healthy, which can then run into problems further down the line, right?
Yeah, you're not just a mathematical algorithm of plugging
Calories.
in calories and X amount of protein, carbs, and it's not as clean working as that, because when you step away and look at, right, the organism as a system, it's like, well, why you plug in those macronutrients, why doesn't it work optimally? And you run into those bottlenecks for people, right, of health issues or digestive issues. And this stuff crops up. It's like a lot of times that's the clients that I'm getting is like, how do you fix this? That ran into the person that wasn't considering all the other aspects around nutrition. And even then, like, yes, you need protein to build muscle, but how do you utilize protein through all the metabolic processes, right? There's enzymes in the body that require lots of micronutrients. Like all of your B vitamins are required for a lot of carbohydrate metabolism enzymes. Or vitamin D, we're finding out all kinds of things regulating at the gene level for immune system function, hormone function. There's aspects around even hypertrophy pathways that vitamin D could have roles in. So all these micronutrients contribute, maybe not directly to driving protein synthesis machinery, but indirectly, they make the whole system work to drive these processes as bodybuilders that we want to try to take advantage of. So you say, well, oh, it's okay, John, I'll just take a multivitamin. And it's not the same thing. So you do need all the other components to truly optimize health. And when you're healthy, you will make the most progress as a bodybuilder possible. And you'll be able to sustain that progress, right? You'll be able to stay in growth and push phases for longer than when you weren't. And you're running into the bottlenecks, like we talk about with, I have no appetite, like I'm choking down food, like I'm bloated with reflux, or I'm starving on prep, then someone goes and cheats on their diet. Like, could we build a diet that would be a little bit more sustainable rather than just tough it out, bro? That's what we do, because that's how it used to be. I think trying to build in some empathy in your coaching is okay, but knowing also when to push people, but having tools that if we are able to lower the degree of suffering per se on bodybuilding, it does make it sustainable and enjoyable. But also there is a fatigue aspect that's going to be lowered. So if someone's on prep, you're like, hey, just tough it out. Versus if I was able to make a diet modification where, hey, now hunger's manageable now. They're not thinking about that. They're not stressing about it. And that will translate over to the physical result, because then all that stress or whatever it may be, the fatigue, maybe they sleep better. They sleep better. They're going to have lower appetite and hunger signaling the next day. And now they're not worried in food focus anymore. And so it's like this snowball effect that the mental aspects that you're coaching through adjusting your nutrition are translating to the physical in other ways. So I think there's a lot of we can develop past the old dogmatic diet of, chicken, rice, and broccoli, and try to build in nutrition profiles that are going to be more optimal for long-term progress and even in the short term for what we're doing on the daily.
Now, you have developed a business from bodybuilding, dietitian. You had if I understand reading correctly, you had a dietitian practice, your own business, right?
I do. It was my business I created, but it was still like I was always based around online coaching and catering to like competitors and some lifestyle at the time. Yeah.
Well, you have been able to leverage your bodybuilding, the audience, the influence, and now make a lot of impact around the world. When did this become a conscious decision and business and the subject of money? And obviously, I talk to coaches a lot about this. When you deliver something of high value, we deserve to receive a financial contribution for the work that we're putting in. When did this change for you in terms of, okay, this is a vehicle towards me making more money. This is a vehicle towards me making more impact, and actually seeing bodybuilding as, a lot of people spend a lot of time battering their bodies, for years and end up with nothing at the end of it. Social media following, 200,000 following, like maybe a few tubs of protein from a supplement sponsor. And then there's the like of yourself who has engineered business, wealth, success, impact through your bodybuilding. Has that been a conscious step-by-step process, or has each step kind of, let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes.
I wish I could say it was very much conscious, but it wasn't. I would have been broke poor trying to figure out how to bodybuild. You know, like I loved it. I loved it that much. And there was a point in my life where I had to make a lot of choices around bodybuilding, where I was in a relationship, I was in a career, and I still wanted to bodybuild. And I could see I came to kind of the Y in the road where the path to choose to go down to be a full-time dietitian and succeed in that, to succeed in my current relationship, meant walking away from bodybuilding. And I couldn't. I loved bodybuilding and felt like I was put on this planet, my purpose to do it, and I couldn't walk away. So I walked away from a relationship in family, people that just weren't fully supporting it, just wanted something else from my life. And even for my career, right, I could see where that was leading when I worked in the hospital. My food service director who managed our kitchen, that would have been my job, which at the time was maybe, $15,000 more a year than I made. And I would maybe get there in the next 15 years. And I saw this life for myself that was not extravagant, that wasn't reaching out to what I knew I truly could do. And I went all in on bodybuilding. Like I just wanted that love. And that's always been my pursuit. So even people that would come to me around coaching, it just happened because I was doing the thing that I absolutely loved. And I kind of fell into things and people asking me almost to start a business, right? And the business kind of became out of just my pursuits of things that I loved in bodybuilding and learning and in coaching. So I didn't actively think I need to start a coaching business because I need to make money. Don't get me wrong. Be like, hey, this would be great to make money and I wouldn't have to go to my day job. But that never was the root driver. It was truly because I just loved to learn and do those things. It's like I wasn't working. And I wanted to do more of the aspects around me not having to work, like it feel like it, right? And I want to, speak to that too, because there's going to be points, just like there's points in my life where I had to have a 9 to 5, and it felt a lot like I wasn't chasing my passions. And there's going to be times where you don't feel like that, and there's going to be lots of steps that you need to take before you actually get there. Sacrifices to be able to fully pursue your passion. So I had to go through that to eventually be where I am now, where I can fully feel like there's never a day that I'm really working. I'm here talking to Mark Coles just about bodybuilding and stuff that I've loved to do. So yeah, when I initially was going to make that transition to like, hey, I knew I had to leave the hospital. I had, I think maybe 6 or 7 clients, and I was like, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to push my clients out there. I'm going to talk about that I'm coaching. And I said, in 3 months, I'm going to leave my job. And I need as many clients to cover my hospital salary. And I just put everything in. I get off my job, work as late as I could to the nighttime to try to make that happen. In 3 months, my 15 hours a week that I would spend like coaching, right? It was much higher at that point, would fully cover my hospital salary, which I'm like, this is amazing. So I left my job and I went all in on bodybuilding. But the whole pursuit the entire time, it's never been about money. It was just chasing down what I loved, and the money came. And there's always in the back of mind, how can I make this more successful? And there is a monetary allotment that goes to that. But even now, like with J3U, it's still about how can I make the most impact, and how can I reach more people with this message? And how can I help people? And I just know from my previous experiences that from even with I had my first client, just doing the thing that I loved and bringing one person in and sharing that with them, and they got a taste of the feeling of like what it means to chase your passion. That's what it's always been about. And the money just keeps coming in. So I think if I was chasing down money, you would have a very different looking J3 University, because we could build it out to just chase down sales and push it that way, but you wouldn't have the sustainability of people buying into the culture that we're creating around trying to elevate that coaching standard in industry, and bringing in people that are similar minded to me, similar valued as me. That's extremely important. We're not chasing down sales numbers. And same with like when I met Mark Fox, that was a blessing. Oh my gosh. I worked for 2 years trying to get J3 University going. I had the idea of like, hey, I want a database for clients to learn. Went through 2 different web developers, spent a lot of money, spent a lot of time, and didn't have anything to show for it. And I finally got connected with the right person. And actually, it's funny you mentioned Jordan Peters. I reached out to Jordan because Jordan, your website's great. It's what I kind of need for what I'm trying to do. Who helps you? It's like Mark Fox. Like, oh, I messaged Mark Fox. He looked at what my other developer was doing. He's like, John, this is not even close to what you're doing. I'm like, oh, I was completely naive to the IT world of like what work looks like an hour's build versus what productivity looks like, right? So got a lot of money spent and not a lot to show for it. Mark had the mind to just take it to another level. And even Mark, right, is about making impact and change. And that's exciting for him. But the money came. So it's never about chasing down money, but it happens anyway, right?
So what I love there, and this is a lesson that so many entrepreneurs will share, and something we do inside our coaching concierge program all the time, is it's about making it better. It's about making the customer experience the best that it can be. And it's about building the community and making sure that the mission is fulfilled. Because as you've said, Jordan said this to me many times. His website was not about how much money he could make. It was how many people could he get to love and learn bodybuilding. And I think what you've just shared there is so refreshing to hear, because at the end of the day, if the product is mediocre, people have to market it 10 times hard. But if the product is valuable and the community is strong and the mission is strong, then people will help you. And a great lesson in marketing and business is if you can get a large percentage of your clients to tell other people about it, a lot of your marketing is done, right?
It is. Yeah. The organic marketing is wonderful.
And do you spend a lot of time marketing the product? Is the product very much an organic product?
Our biggest sales are driven through organic. Wow. Now, just this past year, we did bring on a marketing team to start driving like some cold traffic and just try to bring more people to just get in front of them to help deliver value. Because that eventually that becomes your limiting factor.
Of course. You
have your own organic pool. And then how do you reach more people? Well, they just need exposure to you. So the marketing piece has come into play to keep pulling people in. Yeah. So yeah, it has been there, but yeah, initially it's still like organic. And also a big one is if you have people in your business, just like, all the coaches that are listening, you're going to have clients, and those clients are going to go out there and speak for you. Was developing an affiliate program, and which just blew me away. I have people that have gone through J3U that are so bought into our culture. They're on fire for it, which it gives me chills because it blows me away. And it's how I used to feel about certain brands or companies. Like I didn't almost care what they sold. Yeah. I love the message and the culture and what it meant and connected to me. It meant something to me, like from a passion development aspect. And that's what J3U has meant to like these affiliates that we brought in. Like they love what we're doing and they believe it and they share it and they want to keep elevating the coaching standards. And that's what that culture and community has done. So now we cultivate these people into our community and they're part of it, and they're now driving that message out and bringing more people in. So I think even from the earlier on coaches, use your people that you have because they believe in you. To put out that message that will bring in more people. Right?
John, what an insightful, informative, enjoyable conversation we've had. I want to say thank you for your time. It's been a conversation I was really looking forward to, and I know so many coaches will get so much from this. People that don't know you, but also people that do know you, different perspectives. So I just want to thank you for your time, firstly.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
How do people find out about J3 and find out about you?
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram, which my Instagram has been just where I put out a lot of my organic messaging. So at John Jewett 3 is my Instagram. And now the actual website, the education hub, is j3university.com, which if you go there, you'll see all of our different education courses, which level 1 is our core curriculum of bodybuilding A to Z, which we have, whether you're first-time competitor or an advanced competitor. I have a bunch of IFBB pros that have gone through it as well, and coaches that coach other pros. So there's something that everyone has been able to take away and develop it. And that's the A to Z of bodybuilding, right? So from nutrition programming to health to off-season contest prep, post-show. Then we have some other individual courses on there as well. We have a female module because coaching females, they're not little men. they actually have some unique needs. And so we have a whole program built around just for females. And applied hypertrophy is our other course, where it takes you in the gym to learn all the cues you need to deliver to get more out of every single rep that you do for every body part. And our new one that we're coming out with is a posing curriculum, which will be beyond anything that's out there, and also taught by Daniel Coffeen, who is a biomechanics mind. So posing has been very kind of whimsical instruction before, right? Like it's very abstract teaching. This will be very logical, mechanical based, right? So just the exact cues of what you need to be able to hit, and from what to do from when you take the first step on stage to walking off. Like what do you do when you stand on the sideline before you're called out? Do you flex real hard, or all those questions that we had? So that's the new one to come out. So go to the website. There's so much information that's on there around J3 University. Then we also have like the YouTube page, which is just my name, John Jewett, that we put out our podcast on, and also just my own bodybuilding journey, which I can't help but share my bodybuilding journey and also give you all the explanations behind the things that I do. So those are all the mediums to learn more about what I do and,
awesome.
And dig deeper.
And what's next for you, bodybuilding?
Yeah, so I am actually about to be 4 weeks out, which I've held it mentally together for you, Mark. I'm sharp enough in the morning.
Thank you.
From the Legion Sports Festival, which is in Reno, Nevada. And I am also 9 weeks out from the Olympia. And I'm qualified for the 212, but I'm making a stop in Reno to do an open debut. So I've always wanted to do an open show. I'm the guy that kind of has to squeeze down to 212. So it's a great opportunity to just walk out on stage, not have to squeeze down to a weight class, and hang out with the big boys. There's no expectations, and just get out there and have fun. And then it might give me a good gauge if I even ever want to do 212 again or not. So this might well be my very last 212 Olympia, because like you and myself, Mark, we're all about getting better and seeing improvement. And I'm getting to a point where 212 is kind of holding me back. And I love to train. I love to grow. So this might be my last 212 Olympia, but I'm going all in for these next two shows. So that's where I'm currently at bodybuilding wise.
Well, I'm sure everybody who's watching, listening, as well as myself, wish you every success for the shows that lie ahead, especially the Olympia.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your wisdom, experience, and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you.